Sitting in LaGuardia Airport in New York wasn't the most pleasant way to spend an evening, thought Max Tronder, as he watched the boarding process for what he hoped would be his flight back home to Charlotte. Max, along with his two sisters, owned a small pharmaceutical company created by their father some decades earlier. The father had developed a series of valuable but rarely used drugs that made the company profitable but never offered much growth opportunity. Both parents had passed, and Max had spent the last few days in New York negotiating the sale of the company to a big pharma concern. Max, with his lawyers and brokers, had reached a deal today, so Max was leaving it to them to finish the contract negotiation. Max hoped he would get home tonight, but it looked doubtful. The last flight of the day to Charlotte was fully booked, and he was number 3 on the wait list. He had not called his wife Camille because he wasn't sure what to tell her. He sat at a bar where he could watch the gate and drank his second gin and tonic, thinking about the deal and the money he and his sisters would share. Something over $10 million for him, plus a well-compensated transition period with Big Pharma, meant a new lifestyle for Kal-El and him. Their twin girls were already out of the nest, or at least on their way. Both were attending college, juniors at Duke, where the tuition was eating him alive. But that would all change when the pharma deal closed. Meanwhile, the boarding process was finishing, and the gate agents were shooing the last passengers into the jetway. And then a bit of a miracle. The boarding sign changed, and Max saw his name appear as having cleared the wait list. He threw money on the bar, waved at the bartender, who gave him the thumbs-up sign, grabbed his briefcase and overnight bag, and sprinted to the gate. The gate agent handed him a boarding pass and quickly explained to him and 2 other waitlisters that a party of 4, who had checked in remotely, had failed to show, so they got the seats. Max ran down the jetway with his new buddies, and as he arrived at the boarding door, realized he had gotten a first-class seat. A good sign, he thought, cleared the flight, sitting in first class, home a day or so early. Maybe that means the pharma deal really will close. The boarding door closed as he sat down, and the flight attendant asked if he wanted something to drink as they taxied to the runway. He felt like he had earned one more drink, so he had another G&T, and then fell asleep, dreaming of a future for him and Camille with enough money to always fly first class. The bump and screech of landing woke him up. He eventually got to the taxi stand to take a taxi home. He had driven his pickup to the airport a few days earlier, but now he was exhausted, a bit drunk, and it was really late, way too late to call Camille to come get him. They lived a few miles outside of Charlotte, so the taxi ride was long enough for him to fall asleep again. The driver had to wake him up when they arrived. Max paid him, added a generous tip, and got out of the cab a bit sluggishly. It had been a long, stressful day and half the night. He was already thinking of snuggling into bed with Camille as the cab backed away, and he turned toward the house. What he saw stopped him and fully woke him up. A gold-colored Mercedes was parked in the driveway, in front of his side of the garage. It looked like a very fancy Mercedes to Max, but then all Mercedes would look fancy at him. The house was dark. It was past midnight by then, and Max just stood there for a few minutes. He had talked to Camille from his lawyer's office about midday, and she had said nothing about having overnight visitors. He was trying to avoid thinking the unthinkable, trying to create a happy scenario that would have him snuggling with a warm, sleepy Camille in just a few minutes. His mind wasn't working that way, though, so he slowly walked to the door in the breezeway between the garage and house. He unlocked it, walked into a silent house, and even more slowly walked through the kitchen and up the stairs to his and Camille's bedroom. The bedroom door stood open. Obviously no expectation of visitors, and Max stepped inside, and he shut down. No other way to express it. His brain stopped working. He stopped breathing. Even his heart, it seemed, stopped beating. He was seeing what he had thought was the unthinkable. Camille was sleeping, naked, splayed across her side of the bed, with one arm draped across a man, also sleeping, even smiling a bit in his sleep. Max stood there forever, it seemed to him, but eventually his brain did start working again. He looked again at Camille's arm across the man, with her hand was resting on his junk. No wonder the AP was smiling in his sleep. And both of them were snoring. That broke Max's heart. Before tonight, he had loved hearing Camille snore. She snored quietly, almost purring, Max thought. He had thought her snoring meant she felt absolutely safe, deep in a restful sleep that came from sharing a bed and a life with Max. He had often drifted off to sleep with that soft purring sound in his ears, but no more. He would never hear that snoring again, never again fall asleep next to her. Even with a broken heart, Max did start to think again. He saw the man's clothes, folded carefully, laying on a chair Max had sat hundreds of times. A smoldering fury was beginning to burn inside Max. He picked up the pants and pulled out the wallet and car keys, then stopped to think some more. He could get a tennis racket out of the bedroom closet and use it to beat the man. Hereafter referred to as butthole, he decided. He could also beat Camille. Both of those actions, while satisfying the short term, could cause big trouble for Max in the long term. Another idea was beginning to form. He pulled out his cell phone for a few incriminating pictures as the idea germinated and expanded. Max finished taking pictures and then picked up all of Butthole's clothes and shoes. Butthole was a big guy. Max was 5 feet 10 inches, about 160 pounds. Butthole looked to be at least 4 or 5 inches taller and maybe 50 pounds heavier. The tennis racket might not have been a good idea, even the short term. With the clothes and shoes in hand, Max took one last look at his wife, his loved wife, the mother of his precious daughters, and hardened his heart against that love that had nourished him for more than 20 years. He left the bedroom, no tears yet, headed back down the stairs and outside. The key fob beeped, the Mercedes doors unlocked. Max put his briefcase and overnight bag inside and slid into the driver's seat. He had never been a fancy car aficionado, but as he sat inside, he realized he liked it. He figured out the controls, put it in gear, and drove off. After about a mile, Max pulled over and took a look at Butthole's wallet. The usual stuff, some money, business cards that ID'd Butthole as Franklin Thompson, senior sales associate at a local Mercedes dealership, a driver's license that showed an address in Charlotte. If Butthole had a family there, Max thought he could cause some real trouble, certainly for Butthole, and maybe for Camille also. In the meantime, Max was exhausted, and he headed for a nearby motel and a night's sleep. Camille Tronder was a very careful person. She knew she was not as smart as her husband Max, but her carefulness had let her affair with Franklin Thompson go on for almost 5 months, with no suspicions from Max. Max was still in New York, she thought, as she lay in bed that next morning with Franklin. He was okay in bed, maybe not quite as good as Max, but out of no contest. Too much of a car salesman, she thought as she was concluding that it was time to end the affair. She did love the size of a man like Franklin, like the football players she had dated in college. Big and heavy, they pinned her to the bed, and she loved that feeling of helplessness as they'd fuck her. But Franklin was getting a bit too possessive. He had wanted to spend the night with her, and she had allowed it, but this would be the last time she ever did that. She planned to spend the rest of her life with Max, and having a strange man in their marriage bed, even though Max would never know about it, was still too disrespectful. She would call Franklin later today and gently but sternly tell him the affair was over, but not until after one last hookup. Back in her bedroom, she was dressing when Franklin came back from the guest room shower, with a towel around his waist. He stood there a moment and then asked, "Camille, where did you move my clothes?" "What?" "I didn't move them anywhere." "Where did you put them last night?" "Right there, on that chair." But they're gone. Did you take them into the guest room with you? They must be here somewhere. Uh, eh. He mumbled as he walked back down the hall to the guest room and then immediately came back. No, they're not there. They're not here. His voice trailed off as he tried to make sense of his clothes' disappearance. Did you maybe leave them downstairs when we came in last night? Camille asked, a bit impatiently, as she thought about both of them having had too much to drink the evening before. No, I'm sure I didn't, but I guess I'll go look, Franklin replied as he headed out of the bedroom. He was back quickly, running up the stairs. Camille, my car is gone. My clothes aren't downstairs. Somebody was here last night. They took my clothes. They stole my car. Fuck. What is going on? What? What? Camille tried to make sense of what Franklin was saying. How could his clothes and car be gone? The two of them had been in the house all night. Could someone have broken in? Of a sudden, Camille collapsed onto the bed. It was Franklin's turn to ask. What? What? Camille tried to formulate a response, but she was having trouble breathing, much less speaking. Franklin, what if it was Max? She finally said. What if he came home from New York while we were sleeping? What if he took your stuff and your car? Oh, crap, said Franklin as he collapsed onto the bed next to Camille. You need to find out where he is. It might have been him, but if he is still in New York, that means some burglar broke in, and that means we need to call the cops. I have to get my stuff back in my car. Crap, that car. If we call the cops, they will want to know who owns it, and it's titled in my wife's name. For some goddamn tax reason, His voice trailed off as he contemplated a future that might range from just bad to absolutely disastrous. I'll call his office. His secretary comes in really early, and she will know where he is. Camille pulled out her phone and punched the number for Max's office. Even thought it was not quite 8 o'clock. Max's secretary answered immediately. Max Tronder's office. May I help you? Hi, Sheila. This is Camille. I know it's really early, and I'm not sure where Max is. He didn't call last night, so, have you heard from him? Camille, it is early, and I know the team in New York worked really late last night. They probably are getting a late start today. I talked to Max about 6 yesterday, just before I went home. He said they were making good progress, and they might have a deal today. That's great to hear. So, he is still in New York, right? Yes, I'm sure he is, and I expect to hear from him as soon as they all get back to the lawyer's office. Do you want me to ask him to call you? Yes, please, but only if he has time. I know how important this deal is. Okay, will do. Bye. They hung up, and Camille turned to Franklin. Max is still in New York, so we need to think about calling 911 to report a break-in and a car theft. Camille, what do we tell them? That your lover had his clothes stolen from your bedroom and his car from your driveway. I mean, what the heck? We are really screwed here. Okay, I get it. Let's think about this. How about if I drive you to your house and leave you there? You get clothes on, and you report the thefts as if they happened there. While your wife was taking the kids to school. And, maybe you don't report the stolen clothes. That might be harder to explain than a stolen car. Yeah, except I told my wife I was going to Atlanta yesterday for a meeting about the new Mercedes S-Class, and I wouldn't be home until this afternoon. Okay, but the plan still works. We just wait until maybe noon, when you would be getting back anyway. You stopped by home, left the keys in the car, since it was a quick stop before you went to the dealership, and your car got hijacked while you were in your house. You know, I think that might work. And I could say I left my wallet in the car, and they took that too. And we can hang out here for a few hours, maybe end up needing another shower. Maybe together. Franklin, okay, yeah. I need to call into work to take a sick day. Hamill worked as a paralegal at a small law firm. The work was okay, if a little boring. She stepped into the hallway to make the call, and came back into the bedroom to find Franklin back in bed. She was tempted, But thinking about Max and about her decision earlier to end the affair, she decided to say no. Franklin, she said, making no movement to take her own clothes off. I think it is time to end this. We've had a good run, but you know it could have been Max last night. We were lucky that it was actually a bad guy. Let's find some clothes for you, and maybe go get some breakfast at a drive-through place. Franklin looked at her, thought hard about trying to change her mind, but finally realized she was right. They had been lucky, and there was always another attractive middle-aged mom coming into the dealership. Okay, I agree. It has been a good run. So, what about some clothes? That turned out not to be so easy. Franklin was 50 pounds heavier and 4 inches taller than Max. Camille finally found a pair of ragged old sweatpants that sort of fit Franklin after she cut some V's out of the material at the waist. She then tied together some shoelaces to go around his waist to hold up the sweatpants. She also found a sweatshirt that had turned pink when it got washed in the wrong washing machine load. She cut out the sleeves and cut some more space in the armholes, and Franklin had his outfit. She started to make a comment about clown wear, but just smiled a bit when she saw his face. They decided to watch television until time to go to Franklin's house. Earlier that morning, just about the time Franklin was discovering his missing clothes and car, Max had pulled into the driveway at the address on Franklin's driver's license. A nice house there, a small bicycle leaning against the side of the garage. Max sat in the car for a moment, thinking, wondering, still no tears. His night in the motel had passed quickly, and he had gone out for a run just at daylight. He was surprised he wasn't feeling worse. Maybe he was still in shock. He approached the front door, carrying Franklin's wallet with the driver's license out. He rang the bell, and a young woman, looking still in her 20s, attractive in a frazzled sort of way, answered the door. Max had on his suit from the day before in New York, a white shirt, looking wrinkled now, no tie. He didn't look his best, but he hoped he didn't look threatening. He held up Franklin's driver's license so the woman could see it and pointed at the gold Mercedes. Before he could say anything, the woman slammed the door in his face, but then opened it again in a few seconds, holding up her cell phone. I have 911 on my phone, ready to hit send, unless you tell me my husband is okay. Ma'am, I have a picture in my phone of your husband and my wife in bed last night, naked and sound asleep. Frankly, I don't think your husband is okay, and I don't think my wife is either. If you want to call 911, go right ahead, and I'll just wait in the car. They looked at each other for a moment, until her face fell, and she opened the door to let him in. She started to say something when they both heard Mommy from the kitchen. Wait here, I'll be right back. She turned away, going back to the kitchen. Max assumed. He heard voices, hers and at least one child's voice. She returned, holding out a cup of coffee for him. I hope you drink it black. I have to get my kids ready for school and then drive them. I'm afraid I trust you right now more than I trust my husband. You can stay here until I get back and then we'll talk. Okay. Fine, Max replied. I'm afraid you and I are in the same boat. He sat down in the living room, and soon the woman and 2 kids appeared. She introduced him as a friend of Daddy's and hustled them out the door. Max just sat there, drank the not very good coffee, thought about calling his office, but in the end just sat there. When the woman returned, she ran up the stairs off the living room without speaking. A few minutes later, she came back down, looking better with her hair combed and wearing some makeup and lipstick. She held out her hand to Max. As they shook hands, she introduced herself. Sorry about the turmoil earlier. I'm Molly Thompson, currently married to Franklin Thompson, who is currently involved with the woman to whom you are currently married. Max had to laugh at her turn of phrase, and it felt good to laugh. You are absolutely right about all the current lies. I'm Max Tronder, and my wife is currently Camille Tronder. He then explained what had transpired the night before and watched Molly's tears start to fall. Camille and I will be getting a divorce, and I'm sure the pictures will help me get a decent settlement. I can send them to your phone if you think you might need them. Yeah, I guess I should have them, Molly replied with dead eyes looking at Max. He reached for his phone, but stopped when she said, "Wait, don't send them to me. If I see them, I will never get those pictures out of my mind's eye. You keep them, and if I need them, I can call you, right?" Sure, Max said, but then added, I may not be in my current job much longer, and I will definitely not be in my current home any longer. Let me give you my lawyer's name and number. You can always reach him if you need the pics or if you need any help in a divorce situation. Okay, thanks, Molly said, but what do we do right now? Are you returning the car? Are you going to wait for Franklin and try to beat him up? You saw him. You could see he's a pretty big guy, even though he's gotten sort of fat. He was supposed to be in Atlanta yesterday for some kind of car meeting and stay overnight there. He should be home sometime today. You know, I kind of like the car, and I've never driven a Mercedes before. I'm thinking I will keep it until somebody makes me return it. Your husband, and I have to tell you my name for him, is Butthole, may have. Molly burst out laughing, and then Max joined in, both of them needing any comic relief they could find. Actually, the car is in my name, Molly said. For some tax reason, more depreciation, I think, Franklin, or should I say Butthole, put it in my name since I drive more than he does. And she paused and thought, then went on, since I own that car, I can write out a permission slip for you to drive it, and the cops can call me to confirm if you get pulled over. Max liked that idea, but didn't respond since Molly was obviously still working out a plan. And another thing, she said, we have had a lot of break-ins in our neighborhood lately. You have Franklin's keys and clothes. If the key we keep hidden in the backyard is gone when he gets here, he may try to break in. And if our security system is turned to instant alert, he could attract some interesting help from the police. Molly, I think I am falling in love all over again. You are magnificent. Okay, calm down. Franklin may just wait to return until the kids and I are back from school this afternoon, but I can pick them up and go to a park for a while. Give him more time to get into more trouble than he is going to be in when I see him. Whatever happens, please let me know, especially if he does get into trouble with the police, and call me when you need the car back. I don't want you to get into any trouble. Will do. Now you need to get out of here, and so do I. Max left, in the nice gold Mercedes, wondering how much one like it, in a better color, would cost. Molly had given him the permission slip, and he assumed she would get the hidden key, set the alarm, and leave for the rest of the day. Camel and Franklin did arrive at Franklin's house about noon that day. Camel dropped him off and quickly sped off, like she was trying to avoid any further contamination. Franklin walked up to his front door, hoping it might be unlocked because Molly was home, and at the same time dreading that she might be. Of course it was locked, and he hurried around the house to the rock in the backyard where they kept a spare key, but the rock was gone. Oh crap, he muttered as he looked at the backside of his house, wondering if he should break in. He did try the back door, but it was locked also, so he decided he really had no choice but to break in. He looked at the windows along the back, calculating which was the best one to break. He decided on the window into the family room. It was the largest in the back, and breaking it would give him the most room to get through into the house. He broke off a branch from a tree that he had been mean to trim and studied the window. Since he was barefoot, he needed a way to get through the glass. He would break from the window. He pulled 2 chairs from the back deck and laid them next to the window. He thought he could climb over the chairs to avoid the glass, and then just be careful after he got into the family room. A few deep breaths, and he was ready to go. Franklin swung the branch into the family room window and exploded with a satisfying crash, followed immediately and unfortunately for Franklin, with the wailing siren sound of the family's home alert system. Even more unfortunately for him, a police cruiser just happened to be driving down his street, since Molly had called the local police station that morning to complain about possible break-ins in their neighborhood. Franklin was muttering as he tried to quickly climb over the chairs to get into the house and shut off the darn security system, but not quickly enough. Police, stop right there and back away from the house slowly. Put your hands in the air. Franklin looked back and saw two police officers, both with their guns drawn. He did as he was told and cut his feet only slightly as he climbed off the chairs and backed away. Officers, I can explain. He started to say as one of the cops pulled his hands down behind his back and handcuffed him. The cop ignored his attempt at an explanation and recited his Miranda rights. Then the cop asked if he had anything to say. Yes, this is my house and I don't have my key, so I was breaking in to get some clothes and call my office. The cops were looking at Franklin's sweatsuit outfit, maybe thinking clown wear when one asked him if he had any ID. No, I don't. You see, I lost my car and all my clothes and stuff, and I just need to get in so I can get some real clothes. How did you lose your car, sir? Well, I was staying last night at a friend's house, and this morning the car was gone. Just gone, Did you report the mysterious disappearance? Did you maybe leave it at a bar somewhere? Franklin was stumped. He didn't want to reveal where he had been or why he had not reported the car's disappearance, but he also didn't want to go to jail for trying to break into his own house, and the handcuffs were really uncomfortable. Then he came up with a solution that might work. You can call my wife. She can identify me, and maybe you could drive me to my office. I can get some help there to get some clothes. He knew that he would take a lot of crap at the car dealership, but that was a lot better than going to jail or having Molly come to the house. One of the cops took Molly's phone number from Franklin and walked off to call her. Franklin could hear the cop's side of the call. Ma'am, this is Officer Riles with the Charlotte Police. He gave the address, and we have a man here who claims to be your husband. He was trying to break into your house because he lost his clothes, and yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We certainly will. Thank you, ma'am. He turned back to Franklin. The lady says her husband is in Atlanta, and anyone breaking into her house must be a burglar. She hopes we put you in jail and throw away the key, but Franklin was almost crying as the cops marched him to their cruiser for the ride to the station, and Camille, she had driven to her office half a day late, but she would make it up. Still wondering about Max since she still had not heard from him, she called his cell phone, but no answer. Then she called his office again. Hi, Sheila. Camille again. I'm getting a little worried about Max since I still have not heard from him. Have you? No, I haven't. I guess that means he is still in New York with the lawyers, but it is really unlike him not to have called. You do sound a little worried, so I'll call up there and check on him, and either he or I will call you back in a few minutes. Okay. Thanks, Sheila. You're the best secretary in the world. A few minutes Camille did get a call back. Camille, it's Sheila. I talked to one of the secretaries in the law office, and she said Max left late yesterday, hoping to catch the last flight down to Charlotte, so I called Max's cell phone to check on him. I did speak with him, and he asked me to tell you he would call you later. Okay. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, said Camille as she disconnected. A snake started growing in the pit of her stomach. Max hung up from his call with Sheila. He was driving the gold Mercedes to a new lawyer, a divorce lawyer recommended by Fred Thomas, his longtime business lawyer. He trusted his business lawyer, and he hoped he would be able to trust the divorce lawyer. Miss Tronder, please have a seat. Ms. Reinhardt will be with you in just a moment, the receptionist informed him. He sat down, somewhat comforted by the lawyer's office. No expensive furnishings, but not cheap-looking either. Before he had time for more worrying, a 50-ish, somewhat stout lady with obviously dyed red hair walked into the reception area. Mr. Tronder. Max stood and nodded, and she continued, I'm Anna Reinhardt. Fred called and told me to take the best care of you. Let's go in my office and talk about your situation. Max followed her into a nice, but not luxurious office, accepted some coffee from the receptionist, and told his story, finding a cheating wife, wanting a divorce, and also wanting to protect his assets, especially the proceeds from the sale of his and his sister's company. He skipped the Mercy's part of the story, although he suspected Anna might find it entertaining. Max, okay if I call you that? He nodded, and she continued, and I'm Anna. Good news. Well, relatively good news, given your situation. Fred told me that you and your sisters owned your company before you married your wife, so your shares are considered separate property. That is, your wife has no claim on your company's shares or on the sale proceeds, but you need to keep the shares and the sale proceeds separate from any joint account you might have with your wife. Make sense? I think so, but what about our house and retirement accounts and things like that? Well, not such good news for you there. Since your salary is much higher than hers, you'll be paying some alimony for a few years. We can probably avoid any retirement account payments by increasing the alimony. I know that's not appealing, but the short-term pain avoids what is usually worse, having to share your retirement money decades in the future. And your kids are in college, so no child support. I assume you are okay being on the hook for the rest of their college expenses. Yes, that's fine. And the house. You and your wife need to decide what you want. You can decide to sell it and split the proceeds, or one of you can buy out the other based on the current appraised value. After what I saw last night, I definitely don't want the house. I don't think Camille can afford to buy my half, so I guess that means selling. Okay, I can draw up the papers that way. The divorce petition is a pretty standard form, so I can have it ready for you to look at tomorrow, early if you want, so we can have her served tomorrow afternoon. Then a proposed settlement agreement can follow next week. Peace. That's pretty fast. Am I? Mr. Trondermax, listen to me. If there is a chance for you and your wife, if counseling or just some time might. No. No. It's really just the shock I'm dealing with. I mean, less than 24 hours ago, I was happy, anxious to get home to my wife, share with her the good news about selling the company. And now, I'm sitting here talking about filing for divorce. But you should go ahead. I'll figure out how to deal with it. Okay, but if you change your mind, just call me and we can adjust. Max thanked her, paid a retainer, and left her office. He walked back to the gold Mercedes, wondering a bit about what was going on with the butthole he had seen the night before. And that reminded him that he had told his secretary he would call Camille. Hello. Camille answered her phone in her office at the law firm where she worked. Camille, it's Max. He called, looking for me. Oh? Max, thank you for calling. I've missed you. Are you? Oh, where are you? I'm here in Charlotte, Camille. When did you get back? That snake deep in her gut raised its head. Last night, Camille. I got back last night. And the snake bit hard. Camille slumped back into her chair. She knew she had to keep this conversation going, but she could barely breathe or much less speak. Camille, I'm hanging up now. No, Max, no. She managed to squeak out. Please, please can we meet somewhere? I need to see you and just see you for a few minutes. Max hesitated. This woman had been his love, the mother of his daughters, the most important person in his life for more than 20 years. Okay, Camille sent her cafe at 6. The snake bit even harder. Camille had to say yes, but Center Cafe was where she and Max had met long ago, both of them out with friends. That cafe had been a special place for them ever since. And now she was afraid of why Max had suggested it. But she had to say yes. Max, I'll see you there. And please listen. I'm sorry. And I love you. Max hung up. Camille sat there crying, the snake biting ever harder. Camille arrived at the cafe early, Max not there yet. She ordered a glass of wine and sat there thinking about what a horrible person she was. Her first real sexual experiences had been with baby's strong football players in college. She had messed around in high school, but it had taken those college football players holding her down, making her feel helpless. When Max came along, she thought she was over that need to feel helpless. Max was everything she needed. Strong in bed, loving, a great father for the girls, a good provider. Everything except sometimes when she was alone, when she was sure no one would see, she would think of one of those football guys that let her relive just a bit that feeling of being held down, of being made to come by that strength and power. Those solitary sessions would have been enough except for a plane ride back to Charlotte from the West Coast. Max had been visiting some pharma company trying to sell a new drug, and she had accompanied him for a getaway weekend before his meeting started. Flying home alone on an overnight flight, she had been seated next to a big man, a coach, as it turned out, of a local NFL team. They had chatted, had too many drinks, and she had fallen asleep with her head on his shoulder. She awoke with his hands on her legs. Camille thought she was over her cheating by the time their girls left for college. She dearly loved Max, and she loved the extra time they had for just the two of them with the girls gone, but that snake slithered in when Max did something nice for her. He told her it was time for her to get a new car, a luxury car that she should choose, and unfortunately she chose to go to the Mercedes dealership where she met Franklin Thompson. He didn't sell her a Mercedes, but he did push all the right buttons to get her into bed. And she knew this was wrong. Wrong because Franklin wasn't all that great in bed. She had gotten away with her previous affairs, and she thought her marriage had not suffered. But now she and Max were more in love than ever, and she wanted to be faithful. That was the right thing to do, not have sex with a big oaf. Letting Franklin spend the night in her marital bed was a horrible mistake, even if Max had not discovered them. But she had let him, and now she was afraid of the horrible price she might be paying. Hello, Camille. Camille looked up to see Max standing there. He looked much older than he had looked before he had flown to New York, and she knew that was on her. The snake in her belly kept nibbling. Max. Thank you for being here. I don't even know how to start saying how sorry I am. May I ask some questions? He said as he sat down. Oh, Max, please no. If we have any chance, questions and answers will just kill that chance. Max, we should run away, just for a few days, to some island in the Caribbean, where we can reconnect, where we can hold each other. Where? Camille, please, don't be delusional. If you can't answer my questions, I'll get up and leave now. The snake kept biting, but Camille knew she had to endure that pain and let Max spend as much as he wanted. Maybe, just maybe, he could come out the other side of his anger to some kind of reconciliation. Okay, Max, ask me anything. Do you know what time I got home last night? A strange question, she thought. Oh, no, not exactly. It had to be after. She shut up. She knew what his next question would be, and it was. And do you know what I saw when I got home, when I walked upstairs to our bedroom, or I should say, what used to be our bedroom? Yes, Max, I know what you must have seen, and I know it had to be one of the worst things you ever saw in your whole life, and I know it is entirely my fault that you saw that, and I beg you to please hear me. Max, I am sorry, sorry enough that I will not contest any kind of divorce you want. If you want to beat me, you can do it right here, and I will not complain. If you want to. Shut up, Camille. Next question. How many men since we have been married? If you lie, if I think you lie, I get up and walk out. Camille's first thought was to lie. Her second thought was that lying was just too risky, and her third thought was that her marriage was most likely dead anyway. 3 Max. 3 men I wish now I had never met. I think I see in your eyes that our marriage is over, and I understand that. You deserve someone better than I am. I'm willing to do just about anything to give us another chance, but I understand if you want to not have anything more to do with me. Get a lawyer, Camille. You will be served with divorce papers tomorrow. Max got up and walked away. Camille sat there, too stunned even to cry at first. As she processed what Max had just said, that snake in her gut bit hard, and she did start to cry. Max walked away from the cafe, remembering how he and Camille had first met there decades ago now, and wondering if this latest meeting would end up being the last time they ever had any kind of intimate conversation. Intimate, he thought bitterly. That must be the worst kind of intimacy, to hear your wife saying she has slept with other men and seen her with that toad Franklin in their bed, asleep, her snoring for God's sake. How could he ever get over that? Maybe he could have dealt with 3 faceless men over the 20-plus years they had been together. Just maybe, with counseling and lots of groveling on her part, maybe. But he would never get over that scene in their bed. Their marriage was over, and sitting in that gold Mercedes, he finally started to cry. At some point, Max realized it was getting dark. He blew his nose, wiped his face, and thought about what Molly Thompson had said that morning, which now seemed like a year ago. She had told him not to send her pictures of her husband sleeping with Camille. She had sensed that forgiveness would be much harder if she had confronted the visual evidence. Max decided to call her, to share that thought with her, and to check on the status of the Mercedes. Hello, Molly answered her home phone. Molly, this is Max Tronder from this morning. I'm just calling to see how you are and to check on what I should do with the car. Max, thanks for calling. I'm hanging in there, I guess. You can keep the car for now. Franklin is in so much trouble, he won't need it for a while. Trouble? I hope you didn't shoot him. No, but he might be wishing that I did. He got arrested for trying to break into our house and apparently took a swing at one of the cops. You know he's a big guy, and the cop tasered him. Then something happened while he was in jail. He won't talk about it, but I think he may have been assaulted in some way by another inmate. I wouldn't talk to him, and he finally had to call his brother to bail him out, and that means his whole family knows what's going on. Wow, Molly, I can't say I'm sorry for him, but I am sorry for you. I do want to tell you that you made the absolutely right decision this morning, not to look at the pictures of him and my wife. If you have any possibility of reconciling, those pictures would make it a whole lot harder. Yeah, he finally got home a couple of hours ago, crying and telling me how sorry he was and begging me to let him stay, at least for now. You know we have 2 little kids, so I'm going to try to work this out. But life is not going to be easy for him. His own brother, who's a lawyer, told me I should insist on a post-nup agreement, and he said he would help with it. Plus, I'm going to be controlling our finances, at least for a while. Franklin is going to be on a pretty short leash, and I plan to jerk his collar a lot. Way to go, girl. I wish you all the best, and when you need the car back, just give me a call. They hung up and Max sat there, envying Molly in a way. Maybe Franklin had learned a lesson. Getting arrested and facing an assault charge for trying to hit a policeman, besides whatever had happened to him in jail, may have scared him straight. Max hoped so for Molly's and their kids' sake. He finally drove back to the motel where he was staying. He had one more job to do before trying to sleep, call his daughters Jane and Joan. Hi, Daddy. Jane, he thought, answered. They were twins, fraternal, not identical, but they might as well have been identical. They sounded alike. They went to the same, very expensive college, studying the same thing, nursing. At least they didn't look quite alike, close and obviously sisters, but not so obviously twins. Max often confessed, but only to himself, that he was happy they were not identical. They were very good at ganging up on him, and he thought it would be even worse if 2 identical young women were working him to get a car, permission to stay out late, money to go to Florida for spring break, whatever the daddy please request of the day was. But he also confessed, again only to himself, that he loved to spoil them. Janie, he responded. Yep, you guessed right. Of course, you had a 50-50 chance. What's up? Listen, tomorrow is Saturday, and I would like to take you and your sister out to breakfast. Well, let's call it brunch. Maybe 11 o'clock or so. At that bistro on 4th Street, where we have gone before. That's fine with me. Hold on a sec. He could hear noises, and then she was back, and it's fine with Joan too, can we? He quickly interrupted her, because their last brunch had included 6 or 7 of their friends. Let's make it just the 3 of us for tomorrow, okay? Sure, Jane answered, but tell me what's. Again, he interrupted, not wanting to start a conversation on the phone that would be hard enough in person. Listen, I need to run. See you at 11. Love you, and tell your sister I love her too. Bye. And he hung up. He hoped she would not call Camille, but he couldn't have told her that. She would have then called Camille immediately. 11 tomorrow morning would come quickly enough. After Max left the cafe, left her with his advice or warning or curse or whatever to get a lawyer, Camille's tears were hard to stop. She knew she had messed up everything, her marriage, her family, her whole life. She knew her daughters would find out, her parents would, all her friends. She would probably lose Max's and her house. And Max, poor Max. To have seen her lying in their bed, naked, probably with that goddamn Franklin having a harden. That scene must have just about killed Max, and Camille's tears continued. A waitress finally came over and asked if she needed to move to the ladies' room. Camille snuffled up her crying and managed a no thank you. She paid the bill and left, heading to the soon-not-to-be-her home anymore. When she got there, she found some gin in the totally wrong amount, not enough to make her pass out, but too much to help her figure out how to get Max back. After she drank it all, it did help her fall asleep, hoping for some kind of miracle to bring back her Max. Max was sitting in the bistro at 11 the next morning when his daughters walked in. He had reviewed and approved the draft divorce petition early that morning, and then had driven the 2 hours from Charlotte, using the time to figure out how and what to tell Jane and Joan. But first, the usual hugs and kisses. How is school? How is work? Food ordered and eaten, plates cleared, and then finally, the real conversation. Daddy, we know something is wrong, Joan started. You look kind of sick. Are you here to tell us you have cancer or something? And if you are, where's Mom? Girls, yes, I do have bad news, but it's nothing physical. No one is going to die and… It's Mom, Jane interrupted. She has done something horrible. Oh my God, is she running off with one of the lawyers in her firm? A young hard body that Joni or I should be chasing. Both girls erupted in laughter, caught up in the absurdity of the idea, until they saw that their dad was not laughing. Daddy, no, not Mom, not. Joan could not finish her fear out loud. Girls, listen to me carefully. Yes, your mom has cheated. She has cheated on me, but that doesn't mean she has cheated on you guys. Yes, it does, Daddy, Joan said through tears. If her cheating is breaking up our family, then yes, she is cheating just as much on us as she is on you. Both girls were crying, and then Max was crying too. The girls got up and were trying to hug their dad and hug each other at the same time. Dad, let's get out of here, Jane said. There's a park about 2 blocks away, and we'll have more privacy there. People were staring a bit, so Max quickly paid the bill, and they walked to the park. A girl on each side of him, all of them holding on to each other. Tell us, Daddy, Jane said after they found a bench to share. We deserve to hear how bad this is. She's right, you know, Joan chimed in. We're pretty grown up, and we can handle it. On my way driving over here, I wrestled with what I would tell you, Max started. I agree. You're both grown, and yes, you're right, your mom did cheat on all of us. I'm afraid I found your mom in our bed at home with another man, and she later confessed that there had been other men before him. I think I'm still in some shock, but I know your mom, and I cannot come back from this. I have already talked to a divorce lawyer, and your mom is going to be served with a divorce petition later today. More tears from all of them, and then finally, silence as they all thought about the news and about what their futures would be. Girls, as bad as this is, you need to put yourselves and your schoolwork first. There is plenty of money to cover your senior year here at Duke, and if either or both of you want to do graduate work, I suspect I can find some money to cover that also. But there's a quid pro quo here. They both looked at him. What did he mean? I am happy to pay for your education, but I expect hard work and good grades from you. Yes, what your mom has done makes concentrating on school harder, but you told me you were grown-ups, and real grown-ups, mature, disciplined people can handle adversity like this. Right. They looked at each other and started crying and hugging him again. Yes, yes, Daddy, you're the best, and we will absolutely, positively not let you down. Joan was giving him the reassurance he needed to hear while Jane was looking thoughtful. Daddy, Joan's right, we will not let you down, but what about you? Are you going to be okay? What are you going to do? Well, you can get a lot of thinking done during a 2-hour drive. First, I want both of you to know that what you have said doesn't surprise me one bit. I know you will continue to do well in school, and I will continue to be proud of you. As for me, what your mom has done has beaten me up pretty badly. I could crawl in a hole and just, suffer, feel sorry for myself, trying to figure out a way to reconcile with your mom, but I figured out that is not taking care of me. All my adult life, I've been taking care of other people. Starting to work at your grandparents' company, I was taking care of them, and then after they were gone, taking care of my sisters since they own their interests in the company, and then taking care of your mom, and taking care of you guys. It sounds like I'm complaining, but not really. The company will be sold soon, and that gets me off the hook for my sisters. Camille is gone, and you guys, I promise I am happy to take care of you to help you get started on your adult lives. So that's what? 2 home runs out of 3 in terms of women in my life. Not bad at all. That leaves me, and you know what? I am looking at this whole cheating and divorce thing not as the worst thing in my life, but as a chance for a new life. A whole new life devoted to taking care of one person. Me. Okay. Dad, really? I mean, if you really mean what you're saying, that's great, said Joan. Jane was a little more skeptical. Dad, what does all that really mean? A new life. What? Working for another pharma company. Buying a farm. What? Good question, and I actually have a good answer. No specifics yet, but this new life is going to be physical. I'm going to run marathons, climb mountains, sail across the Atlantic, hike the Alps, go on safaris. There are a million things for me to do, and you know what? While I'm doing these things, I might meet a pretty woman doing the same things, and who knows? Darn, Dad, that's amazing. Both girls looked at him with their mouths hanging open. This was their dad, not some adventuresome stud. Did you really come up with all this driving over from Charlotte? Jane asked. Well, yes, partly, but also, I haven't slept much, and my mind has been spinning around, coming up with different ideas. I mean, I could start drinking and feeling sorry for myself, but instead I'm going to make the best of this mess. Trust me, I'm going to be okay. Max left his girls with more hugs and kisses and a few more tears to drive back to Charlotte, still in the gold Mercedes. As soon as Max left, the girls were on the phone to their mother. Hello. A scratchy voice answered the phone at the Tronders residence. Joan put her phone on speaker. Mom, it's Joan and Jane. We just had brunch with Daddy, and he told us some awful news. What? Oh? What did he tell you? Well, divorce was the big word, and your cheating was the cause. Dad gave us a little more detail, but that's basically it. Is it true? Oh, girls, it's complicated. You father and I have been married a long time, and mistake. Yes, I've made a big mistake. Well, More than one, actually, but I'm sure we can get past this. I just need to give your dad some time to. Mom, Joan interrupted, listen. Dad said divorce. He wasn't talking about fixing a mistake. Mom, he was talking about cheating. Well, yes, technically, he's right, but that doesn't mean we can't fix this. I told him I would do anything. Mom, it was Jane's turn to interrupt. I think you are being delusional. He told us he has already seen a divorce lawyer. He really sounds like there is no way back for the two of you. Joan and I don't want to take sides, but you need to be realistic. Tortured breathing on the other end of the line. Joan and Jane looked at each other. Did they need to drive to Charlotte? Finally, Kimmel spoke in not much more than a whisper, I know I've screwed up, ruined my marriage. I think your dad hates me, and he's right. I have done hateful things. Your dad told me to get a lawyer, and he's right about that, too. I'm sorry, girls. I know this is awful for you, too. Mom, don't worry about us, Joan said. We'll be okay, and I know Dad is doing the best he can. You need to take care of yourself. Getting a lawyer sounds like a good idea. Jane and I can drive over to Charlotte if you need us to. Thank you, girls. That's sweet. I'll be okay. I just need some time to adjust to what I have done. They hung up, the girls still not sure what to do. You know, said Joan, it's funny in a not funny way. We're more worried about Mom, who caused this whole mess, than we are about Daddy. They talked some more, finally deciding not to go home, but to let the Rents deal with each other without daughters chiming in. Kimmel sat in the house in Charlotte, a little hungover from her gin the night before and more than a little depressed after talking with her daughters. She knew she should get up, get dressed, and get out of the house. Do something, she thought. The doorbell rang as her thoughts drifted toward maybe going to get some more gin. A young woman was standing on the doorstep when Kimmel opened the door. She appeared to be chewing gum. May I help you? Kimmel asked. Yes, ma'am. Are you Kimmel Tronder, wife of Max Tronder? Why, yes, I am. Why you ask? Ma'am, you have been served, said the woman as she handed Kimmel a folder full of documents and snapped her photo. What? What? Kimmel was asking as the woman walked back to her car. Kimmel walked back inside and sat down at the kitchen table to look at the mysterious folder. When saw the title of the first document, she almost fainted, petitioned for divorce. She recalled Max's last words to her, get a lawyer. Sitting there, looking at the familiar kitchen she had enjoyed with Max, she knew they weren't coming back from what she had done. Update. Kimmel was right. She and Max did not come back from her cheating. 6 years later, sitting in the ballroom of an expensive hotel, watching Jane dance with her new husband, Kimmel's mind was mired in the past. When the girls had been teenagers, she thought life was horrible. Full of too many activities, too much teenage angst because too many boys were either being too mean or, from Campbell's perspective, too nice to the girls, Max too busy, her pyrological work too boring. Back then, life had been overwhelming, but now she missed it tremendously. She still worked at the same law firm, doing the same kind of boring paperwork. She wished, Kimmel, here is your wine. Kimmel looked up at her date, a perfectly nice, middle-aged, paunchy, balding lawyer who was accompanying her to Janie's wedding and reception. Your daughter looks lovely, just like her mother. Thank you, Carl, you're sweet, and thank you for the wine also. He was a sweet man, and she could see herself settling into marriage with him if he was that interested, but he certainly wasn't Max. She couldn't help looking across the room at Max. He had just returned from a climbing trip in Nepal, and to Kimmel he looked like one of those bronze statues of a Greek god. Tanned, incredibly fit-looking, even more handsome than she remembered. Right now, he was smiling and laughing with Joan and her boyfriend, while he was holding hands with a woman, beautiful and just as fit-looking as Max. Joan had told her that Max had met this woman on another climbing trip, somewhere in South America, and they had been traveling and sailing and climbing together for months. It made Kimmel sick just to think about it. Kimmel. Carl was trying to get her attention. Yes, Carl. Kimmel. I think we should leave. You've done your duties as mother of the bride, and you're staying here, drooling over your ex-husband, is not doing you any good. And I dare say, it's not good for whatever relationship you and I are developing. Carl, you are sweet, and you're absolutely right. Let me go say goodbye to my daughters, and we're out of here. Kimmel hugged and kissed her daughters, wished the newly married couple all the best, and as hard as it was for her, she ignored Max and his too cute girlfriend. Max did see Kimmel as she was leaving the ballroom and had just a pang of sadness for their old times together. As he watched her, Joan was asking him a question. Sorry, Joni, what were you saying? Daddy, remember that weird-looking gold Mercedes you were driving when you and Jane and I had brunch that morning when you drove over to see us at Duke? Whatever happened to that car? Joni, that's quite a story, which I will not bore you with. I'll just say I had borrowed that strange gold Mercedes from a friend and eventually gave it back to her. I think she sold it. It was really a bad luck car, and Max turned back to his climbing girlfriend to talk about their next